Well, a very warm welcome to all of you. We are now approaching the final session of the day. Thank you very much for being here, that you made it, and we just thought about what shall we do to keep it entertaining. Should we dance? Should we do whatever? No, we won't, but hopefully and surely we've got an interesting panel final session here lined up for you. As you can see on the slide, here's our panelists, David, Jula, Joyce, Alexandra, and Kati. I will introduce them to you in the course of the session. And the title of our final session, you can also see there, Media Literacy and Fact-Checking, Practitioners' Insights. And that's what we want to do. We've heard so much about the DSA, about regulation, we've heard about AI and research and technology. Now we want to sort of dive in and talk about practical experiences, practical solutions ideally. What is happening, what people are doing. We want to look at best practices or all sorts of practices in these fields of media literacy and investigations, verification, fact-checking, and that's why I'm very happy to have this amazing panel here lined up. 1 hour is not very long, especially when you have 5 people plus myself doing all the talking, but we try to condense it, and we started late. That reminds me, I have to look at the time because we started late. So what we've prepared, and I've been told I was very German, very strict. I've got a running order with detailed time slots as well. So we're trying to somehow stick to that because I want everybody to have their say. But what I also want is I want you to be involved. So do not feel shy. There's various stages in which I will ask you if you have any questions or if you want to contribute anything. So get ready and prepare yourself for questions you may have. If you don't have any questions, that's also no problem because I've got a lot here and here. So we are starting with one presentation. There's one presentation which will last around about 10 minutes. And then there's going to be one-on-ones, around about 5 minutes with each of the panelists, and then we're going to engage, as I said, into a discussion. So to start with, I would like, in a moment, where is he? There he is. Julo, he's moved places, and Joyce to do a presentation. And the presentation they will be doing is focusing on work they've done together. When I say they, that means AFP and Bellingcat, and they've done this together as part of the SEDMO project and activities. Now, before I hand over the floor, allow me a few words about the organizations and the people you see here, starting with Joyce. Joyce is working for AFP, Agence France Presse, or French news agency, Agence France Presse. So probably everybody knows them. They're a world-renowned news agency, mainly in the business-to-business sector, and they're also active in numerous of the so-called EDMO hubs, including SEDMO. So Joyce is not only active in these verification and fact-checking initiatives, she's got a very long sort of list of credits to her name. She's been working as a journalist in various countries, not only countries, but also continents for AFP. So that's also interesting to bring both that into it, not only the fact-checking perspective of the sort of new kid on the block, but also the experience of a classical journalism training and profession. So great to have you here, and you can give her already a round of applause before she's even said anything. Julu is working for Bellingcat, and Bellingcat, I don't know if I have to introduce who they are, what they do. Bellingcat was founded in 2014 by a guy called Elliot Higgins, and Elliot used to be unemployed, bored, didn't know what to do. His wife was pregnant, so he started off as the blog Brown Moses in his living room in Leicester, and all he had was his very old computer and an internet connection and a passion for investigating. He started off with arms deliveries, different kinds of arms that were used in the war in Syria. And that's how he started under this Brown Moses blog. And then it became more and more professional. And I would always say, I have said that numerous times, in a way they've revolutionized investigations, so-called OSINT, and that's what we also talk about, open source intelligence. So they've done amazing work in that space. One of their first biggest investigations was the shooting down of flight MH17, the Malaysia Airlines plane that was shot down over Ukraine, killing almost 300 people on the way from Amsterdam to Kuala Lumpur. So that investigation was groundbreaking, I would say, and ever since they've done a hell lot of other investigations, be it war, conflict, and what have you. And Julius working there as an investigator, as an editor, and he also has a traditional background, journalistic background. He used to work for the BBC, for Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, and Euronews, if I remember correctly. So we're also great to have you here, and you get also your applause before we start. And this brings me to the end of this introduction. I hand over maybe a few words about myself so you know where to place me. As you can see, I work for Germany's international broadcaster, Deutsche Welle, in research and development. I also go into schools, as Nicola has just said. I've been doing that, sort of keeping me on the ground, and it's very fascinating to hear and see what these young ones, 10 to 15 years old, are doing and how they're dealing with information. And I'm also on the board of SEDMO and also in the board of EDMO and GATMO, which is the German-Austrian Digital Media Observatory. But enough said, I now hand over to you, and I don't know if you want to come here or stay there. Oops, I think I've pressed.
Okay, so we wanted to present to you, Julia and I, the investigation we did recently in September as part of our commitments to SEDMO. AFP, as you know, works in several languages. We have about 150 fact-checkers worldwide working in 26 languages. So in this new iteration of SEDMO, we decided to commit to doing 3 investigative reports with Bellingcat. And we launched the first one. We started working on it, I believe, in about May. We started discussing with Bellingcat the topic we wanted to address. And we decided that we were going to do an investigation on the scale of destruction in the town of Vovchansk in Ukraine, using Bellingcat's capabilities and AFP's on-the-ground capabilities, using our reporters in Ukraine. We sent a reporter from AFP, which way do you go? This way? This way? Yeah. We sent a reporter from AFP who speaks Russian. He met up with our team in Kiev, and they traveled to Kharkiv since they couldn't get into Vovchansk. And we tracked down beforehand the mayor of the town, we tracked down the priest, we tracked dothe several residents, and Bellingcat provided the mapping, basically. And the reporters spent about two days in Kharkiv doing interviews. And we came out with the report just last week, and I would encourage all of you to read it. It's, I think an investigation like this puts a face to the story. A lot of times we hear about destruction everywhere and we don't humanize the story. And I think with the help of Bellingcat, we were able to use their capabilities and AFP's capabilities to put a face to that story. And we published it last week. So this gives you an idea. Do you want to talk a bit about what you provide?
Yes, so what we did is creating a map, an interactive map on damages in Vovchansk, and it was done manually. So the whole city was, the damages was assessed manually by one of our researchers, and then 2 other researchers joined just to help him and to fact check and double check. And what we did is we also used not just the map by Planet Lab, but also videos and photos to fact check and double check that we are correct. And we also put a damage assessment layer over the map. So where you can see, you will see like red and orange and green like layers on buildings. That means the So you can see, you know, there are the red buildings and the yellow buildings. It means the red that it was completely destroyed. The yellow, the orange means that it was partially destroyed, and the green means that that building was not destroyed. And we created this interactive map where you can zoom in and zoom out, and you can almost go down almost on a street level to see what happened to this city. And we found that almost like 90% of city center has been completely destroyed, and 60% of the city has been destroyed by Russian forces by the end of this September. So it's for me personally, it was really shocking, you know, to see this scale of this this destroying this city. And I guess that texts simply, you know, just cannot give it back when what you see with your eyes. And of course, you know, the human angle or the testaments were also very important, and AFP did a great job with that.
Yeah, it was actually quite heartbreaking when you speak to the residents who tell you about their losses. Like many towns in Ukraine, some of the residents had family across the border. Many of them have lost family members, like this lady, Nelia, who spoke about, she lost her son in Bakhmut. This is the local, we spoke to the local priest, Father, I'm going to destroy his name if I say it, Klimenka. We spoke to this lieutenant who was quite bitter about the way the lack, he said, of any defense in Vovchansk, facing, you know, the Russian onslaught. We spoke. This was quite a heartbreaking story. This is a lady whose daughter is pro-Ukraine and whose son is pro-Russia. So she moved to Vovchansk to be next to both of them, and she decided to stay in Vovchansk, and her daughter believes that she has died. And that was quite a heartbreaking story. She did not want to leave. And this is, you see the family when they were there, when it was, you see the lady that her daughter says she believes is dead now, with her daughter and her 2 grandchildren. And her son, who is in Belgorod, who is pro-Russian. Then you want to speak a bit more about the methodology? So
here is the map. You can see, you know, up there that it's the June 20, 2022. We selected this date because this was just before a major Russian attack happened on the town. And then we selected September 25 this year. Because this was the latest date, we, you know, just assessed the map, and then we added a damage assessment layer. Yeah, we can. And here you can see this is like what happened. This is the September 25th situation in Vovchansk. So the green means there are no observed damage, the orange or yellow indications of damage, and the red, the total destruction of a building. And it's very clear, you know, that there is this river running through the city, and north of the river it's completely damaged, and south of the river it's more or less the situation is a bit better, but of course these decisions we made were based on visual evidence. So our colleagues went building by building and assessing the damage in this city.
Going forward, we're going to be doing 2 more investigations with Bellingcat. We haven't decided on the topic yet, but it's going to be on Ukraine again. And again, AFP will use its resources with video, graphics, photo, and text with Bellingcat, which will be backing us on this. We haven't decided on the next report. Will probably come out next spring because it takes quite a bit of time to prepare these reports. For example, our reporter had to undergo training as a journalist in a war situation. We sent him to London to undergo a special training, and then he met up with our team there. And obviously going there and coming back and then working together with Bellingcat, that takes quite a bit of time. So we'll have one report coming up in the spring, next spring, and 6 months later we'll do the third report. And we're going to be meeting with Bellingcat soon to discuss the next topic that we'd like to do. 10 minutes?
Okay. Thank you very much. Excellent. No, even less. So that gives me the opportunity to ask one question straight away. What you've just shown us, first of all, thank you very much for this hard work and probably very time-consuming work. What you've shown us there, on the one hand, we have that very analytical, tech-focused OSINT investigation. And on the other hand, what Joyce has just shown us, the human touch or the human angle. So I'm bringing that together. What would you say, one question to both of you, is the main challenge in this kind of storytelling? What is the main challenge?
I think the main challenge is, first of all, finding the people you need to interview. It's, finding the priest, finding the mayor, finding residents, humanizing the story. It's not something you don't just pick up the phone and call them. So that takes quite a bit of time determining who you're going to interview, how you're going to do it. And I guess the challenge also is the topic that you want to address. We're going on 3 years almost. In February, I think the war in Ukraine will be 3 years. And I think we've become accustomed in Europe and elsewhere to watching this war on our doorstep. And I'm not sure we're horrified enough anymore. And I think what we're trying to do with the help of Bellingcat is to bring their forensic evidence that they bring to us and humanizing it. And that's a challenge today in the information landscape, to try and humanize these stories.
Okay, thank you very much. We get back to the whole round in a minute, or in a few minutes. Because next I want to bring into our discussion Dr. Alexandra Mankos, who's sitting on the other end of the table here. And she works for Demagogue. Demagogue should also be known to most of you, I assume, various outlets. She's working for Demagogue Poland. If I'm correct, now I have to check your precise title. Now, you work in a sort of number of education initiatives that are part of the Fact-Checking Academy. So that's focused on media literacy, but also fact-checking. So could you, before we get into the conversation, or you please outlining very briefly in what you do, and also pointing out to what you do, but also to the challenges that you're facing, because that's a very, or quite a different field, but somewhat related. So over to you, Alexandra.
Thank you very much. Happy to see you all fresh and full of energy. So my name is Alexandra Mankos. I represent Polish Demagogue Association, so a fact-checking organization that has been established in 2014, starting with the fact checks of politicians' claims. But I would like to draw a background for now of what we are doing, both in the field of the fact-checking and media literacy, as we see as fully interrelated and helping each other. So we are combining those two approaches. As a fact-checking organizations, we, of course, still verify politicians' claims. We debunk fake news on the social media platforms. But we also started a quite strong cooperation with the journalists, with an emphasis of the local journalists. So we are also trying to get involved in various investigations, both on the local and national level. We've been covering, for example, a part of Polish doppelganger operation and describing that together with the journalists. We also write explanatory analysis that has a more of educational vibe. And what we do, we also take the fact check step, the next step in the education field. So we try to educate people through the podcasts, the classical form, but also the video podcasts. We are investing a lot of effort in social media communication, trying to not only portray of what is and on our website, so the fact checks, but also bringing some news stories to the TikToks, Reels, carousels, and so on. And there is the big leg of Demagogue that is focused on education, and this is what exactly I do. I am responsible for the e-learning courses and the development of them, of learning courses for teachers, for pupils, but also for the general public. We also prepare, together with the partners and also alone, some of the teaching materials, bringing some of innovative topics to disinformation and the classical critical thinking curriculum, such as, for example, the topic of emotions in disinformation. So by doing so, we are taking a step back to learn, to try to teach people how to discern various kinds of emotions. So this is what happens before they even encounter some social media content. We also, of course, we are devoted to trainings, both on science and online. And what I'm happy to see is various groups coming to us, asking about such programs. So there is this demand from both NGOs, public institutions, even business, especially journalists. We just successfully trained during 2 webinars over 400 journalists on AI and different tools. So basically, this is the overview, and I believe this implementing these fact-checking first-hand experiences to the media literacy curriculum is the greatest importance and the added value.
I have a question which may sound a bit harsh, but so you've outlined what you're doing, but what we all want to know is what impact does it have? So how do you measure the impact, or how do you know, maybe, or maybe you don't, how do you deal with it, measuring impact of what you do? Because it's very important what you do, what we all do, but we always often ask ourselves, how does it have impact and what can we do better?
Yeah, we do our best to of course, implement and put an emphasis on the evaluation. So it depends on the project. They are, for example, for now, we are testing a new approach to workshops for the teenagers. And in that case, we are trying to implement the pre-intervention and post-intervention surveys, trying to assess the entry level of knowledge and skills among some of our teachers, some of our beneficiaries of the workshop. So the school kids, I can't give you the numbers now because we are just in the process and we've just started with the project. But in the case of the previous projects, what we try to do and how to measure the impact is by, for example, of course, doing surveys. And we have some numbers like over 90% of surveyed educators find the materials on emotions useful, and also raising awareness on disinformation. So this is what we can do. We can also measure the number of downloads, but I think it doesn't tell that much. What we do, we also, especially in the beginning of the projects, we invest in focus groups to test the expectations of the educators and teachers. And later, this is an example of the project that was funded by the European Media and Information Fund, the Fake No More project that I found very successful, is that after we released the materials, we were conducting some of the interviews with the teachers that were actually using the materials. So we know what was more or less the reach. So we've reached in a couple of countries over 5,000 of educators with the program. This is the one case that I can give in an example.
And one more question directed at you, and I'd like to ask for a quick answer or short answer. We've seen the figures of certain countries earlier on in the questionnaires or based on the questionnaires. And we've heard that we're living in an age of polarization, emotionalization, and what have you. Now, what do you consider in your work is the biggest challenge, or where would you like to get more support, or what is the biggest challenge for the work you're doing?
achieving the big scale, I would say. So this is why we switched from workshops for the teenagers to training teachers, believing that the teachers can be the ones that can bury these divides between people by bringing some of the critical thinking elements to the curriculum at the stage before the youth is being more and more polarized. Also.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Alexandra. Thank you. Moving on, I'd like to bring in now David Pochowski, and he's got quite a versatile career to his name already. He's, as far as I informed myself, as far as I did my research, he's written 7 books with 1 forthcoming, or is it 6 plus, or is it 6 plus 1? So it's not published yet, it's not yet number 7. So 7 is out very shortly. Also, he's got a background, he's a former policeman. He worked in the Slovak police forces, and that's where he also set up a very popular at the time portal, the most popular of the country in the time, and that was set up in 2017, if I remember correctly. Brain is still functioning. But it had to be, abandoned and given up. And he also had to leave, was made to leave, or just left the police force. I'm going to ask you about that details as well. But he didn't stop there. He then, or he's in the process of setting up a new portal that does exactly that, informing about disinformation, hoaxes, fraud, and what have you, not under the umbrella of the police forces, but under his own name. It's not operational. I looked at it a few days ago, but there was not yet operational. It is now, so it is now. So we're going to hear first what he's doing there and why he's doing it, and especially with the context of doing this in Slovakia. Over to you.
Little bit, good evening or afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for inviting here. And at the beginning, maybe a little bit background info to the Slovak environment, because it's, I guess, really interesting to everyone outside living outside of Slovakia, what is going on there. So back in 2017, I was asked and hired by the Slovak police to start the social media for them from the zero. 7 or 6 years later, their main Facebook page had over 500,000 followers, and it was the most read Facebook page in Europe in terms of the police pages, per capita, of course. But in the same year, at the beginning, I also was asked by then leaders or leadership of the Ministry of Interior to start something against disinformation, some project. So I started the second page. It was named Hoaxes and Frauds, the Slovak Police Republic. Meanwhile, then government lost elections in 2020. And meanwhile, the same government took power in 2023. And suddenly, all these projects I started 6 years ago or 7 was problematic to them. So I was kind of forced to leave the police. And it happened to dozens and dozens of other people working for the other state institutions. Like, for example, Cabinet Office, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ministry of Health, and others. So the Slovak story is very sad, because such kind of clearance, post-election clearance, really hit everyone so deep like never before. As you said, I started my own project. Actually, it was in January. So I can honestly say that I'm perfectly fine. But I would like to point to many, many others, my former colleagues, whose end was not happening under such good conditions like mine, and they still have some problems, because it's one side when you have to leave, but the other is when the government and your state try to attack you with the help of some proxy disinformation channels. So for some of my colleagues or former colleagues, was it really bad experience when they were under pressure of such channels, or even a person who is internationally wanted person, and the current government quite cooperates with him because he can, of course, speak or uses very different language than the government officially. So in January I started the hoaxes and frauds without any additional names or acronyms like the police force. I asked people for some help, so we raised like more than 30,000 euros in 1 month from the public in crowdfunding campaign. And currently there are around 20 people in this project working voluntary, and our work consists of debunking fake news on a daily basis. We publish short analysis every day on our Facebook and Instagram pages, and from time to time we publish long analysis which we distribute by emails to stakeholders or what has left of them in Slovakia, but also to our international partners.
Okay, thank you for outlining that. So we talked about challenges, but that sounds like you're facing, or did face, very, very serious challenges. What is the biggest challenge now, and how can you operate in Slovakia at the time? Can you operate freely, or what's it like?
I and others still face some challenges, of course. It has not vanished yet. For example, besides our online work, we also have some offline activities in the real world. But we can't comment on them, we can't tell the people what we are doing, what the lectures we are doing or giving to what groups, because there are very clear signs or even public comments from the government that our existence or work should be kissed, or I would say. So that's the one part. And the other part is what is happening on Telegram, for example, some pressure from the most infamous disinformation figures, for example. So I would say this is the one side, and the other could be some maybe new coming law implemented, which would make our work very problematic even, like maybe the foreign agents law. 1 year ago, it was there was a huge discussion about that, so we will see how it ends.
And what about the audience? Can you say anything about your audience? Who is viewing the material, who's using the material? Is it the already initiated, or are you also reaching out to sections of society that are difficult to reach otherwise?
Our audience consists of many former fans of the police Facebook page, because of course they were very sensitive when such changes occurred at the police. So as soon as I started the new project, we got 20,000 fans, followers at the beginning. But I always say that our work is not for those people who already believe the fake news, because we are not going to persuade them from day to day. We are giving analysis and facts and documents to our fans and audience, and it's up to them to share it with their relatives, friends, who never open our pages.
Okay, thank you very much. We have to leave it at that for now, because I would now like to introduce the 5th panel member. That's Cathy Bremme. She works for France Télévisions, not surprisingly, in France, in French France, where she is head of innovation, and that means she's at sort of the intersection of emerging new technologies, trying to see what is out there, what is coming, and bringing that into the organization. And France Télévisions, like the organization I work for, is a so-called legacy media, or some people say old media, although we don't prefer to call us old media, but we've been around for quite some time. Now, when you hear all this and you working for an established media organization like France Télévisions, and you're hearing that media literacy, fact-checking, by the way, she's also the editor-in-chief of a media literacy platform or website that does exactly that, bring that across to young people. When you hear that and also know of what it's like, on the one hand, dealing with slow movers, like we sometimes are, but on the other hand, also, we've been in that profession, or our organizations, namely, we've been doing journalism and fact-checking for decades. How do you approach all this in France Télévisions? What advice can you give us and the audience here?
So I will come back to the degrees, because actually we are approaching all of this in a 360 degrees approach. And by the way, thank you, Sedmo, for rebranding France TV to Next Generation Hub. I like it very much. So 360 degrees, what does that mean? We really have this kind of circle. We begin with Foresight, and so our Metamedia brand, where we are doing also a lot of acculturation with all the people at France TV. That's the first step. Then the second step, we have this kind of R&D and open innovation work we are doing. So we are associating with startups and testing very quickly things. For instance, we were able to test very quickly a tool to detect deep fakes. Obviously, then we have continuing in the circle our content department, and there we have all the news content we have both online and in our old TV shows, debunking fake news, our TV shows about fake or real, and a new news program destined to 12 to 18-year-olds. No, that's the content side. Then we have the partnership and labeling side in the circle. So we are integrating the C2PA label and also all the other labels, but labeling is not very useful. We already told it, without education, and that's really the last part in this circle we are doing at France TV. And education is both inside France TV through very practical workshops, for instance, with the arrival and the rise of generative AI. We put in place very practical workshops for our newsrooms inside the Media Lab, and then we are going to schools too. We are also working with schools. We have a very beautiful project in Tahiti with France TV overseas department, where we are going into schools and we are doing really more or less real TV over there with the small children. And we also go, and that's the fact, in order to be a little bit more at scale, to academies and teaching the teachers. And that's a program we have for years now, and we added very quickly to a workshop about generative AI, because now in this new world we need really to be a little bit more understanding and on what the impact of those new technologies on media are. And just to finish, we are talking a lot about media and information literacy as some kind of concept, but I'm just back from the Media and Information Literacy Summit from the UNESCO in Jordan. And over there, and I like to share a little bit of emotion with you, when people are talking about media and information literacy, it's almost a question of survival, because they really need to create this unity in order to at least about some kind of concept of reality and of truth they totally forgot. So this is really something very important over there, but still important in France and with this new generations too. And just to finish the finishing, in the new world, in this new ecosystem, we have also those new players, because we know for quite a long time young generations are not watching TV anymore, but now they are informing themselves on social media with influencers and content creators. And there is another question on what is our job in there, what is our role as a public service media regarding those journalists and influencers who are able to create a link and a real relationship with younger generations, which is something we are not really able anymore. We lost a little bit this connection. And so what we need to is perhaps also a little bit audience literacy and not only media and information literacy from the other hand.
What you just said sounds like a lot more than just what you used to do or what we used to do, namely produce radio and television, maybe text and distribute or disseminate to audience going into schools, and you've outlined it all. What do you then regard as a major challenge? You said that the connection to the audience, especially reaching the younger ones, Is that the major challenge you're facing, or what is it for such an old, established organization that has to transform left, right, and center and really adapt? Because otherwise, if we don't adapt...
But the major challenge is really to change mindsets, the major inside the company, because most of the people are very happy to produce media. But what we need to do is to produce more service and a little bit less media, perhaps.
And how do you do it? Change the mindsets?
Talk to people and trying to convince them. It's very, it's a long-term relationship. So we are doing it for years now. We are giving examples. We are also taking people and bringing them to other media and bringing young people inside the company and exchanging with them. Because before I was responsible for the regional and the overseas digital media, and I always told the journalists when I did the workshops, so just look at your children at home, what are they doing? Because they never do the connection between what they are producing in their work, in their daily work, and the usage of the younger generation they have at home.
And one final question that's only to you, that's also already opening up now, before I then give you the opportunity. Are you embracing the stuff that we've seen, for example, by Bellingcat, OSINT, Open Source Intelligent Research, which is sort of sometimes frowned upon a little bit by some sections of the business or so? Are you embracing that, or you say this is something the others should be doing, these OSINT people, these self-taught couch investigators? What's your relationship to that?
I'm not at all like this. No, we have a dedicated we have a dedicated department at France TV to do this kind of stuff, but we have a double approach, because we have this department and then we also have our department to do the workshops and the learnings for journalists, and we formed all the journalists on those techniques. So normally everybody is able to do it, and because we have 24 regions and 9 overseas stations, so we cannot all rely on one department, on one fact-checking department, so everybody needs to be able to use it. And those techniques, we are even showing them in the schools and in the academies when we are going out.
Okay, and I have to give that to Jula as well. How do you regard those traditional journalists or so who sometimes think they know everything? How do you regard them? And you're working together. What's your view on that?
Well, I have 20 plus years of background in so-called traditional journalism, so I'm absolutely all for it. But I think that what we do at Bellingcat is also it's a bit different, but also very important because of transparency and openness. So, for example, when we publish a story, we always give the tools and the roadmap of how we do it. So practically everyone, for example, in this room with a laptop and an internet connection can do what we do. We have a sub-page with hundreds of tools what you can use. We do a lot of trainings in universities and for journalists as well. So I think, and I'm sure that what we do with AFP is a good example how we can complement each other. So, for example, one of the limitations of what we have is how to include this kind of human angle or human stories into an open source investigation. And by partnering with AFP, we found a very good partner and a good blueprint of how to do it. So I think that traditional journalism and open source investigations can complement each other very well.
Okay, thank you very much. I would now, before it's too late, like to give you the opportunity to ask any pressing questions you have. So this is your opportunity now. We might have a second one, but we never know, depending on time. I've still got a number of questions here and here, but before, Nicola, is there a microphone here in the very first row? Or, I mean, I think they're recording it, so it's probably best if you go on mic.
Thank you. I have a question to Kati, but maybe to everybody else also, which is, you were mentioning you have to have a change of culture in your company, that they have to produce more services than media, but at the same time, how important are still media, journalistic media stories for this whole environment? Because it's very well to fact check, apply media literacy and all these issues, but if the right content is not there, you know, how do you approach this in this context? That's for you, but maybe everybody else.
I can answer, and then I let the space to the other ones. I think there are two answers to this. The first answer is the fact-checking by itself is a story, and we are telling it as a story. We are producing content through this. And the other one is, yes, it is still important, extremely important, more than ever important to produce content in this world where we have AI-generated content flushing over social media. So that's perhaps the last thing which will differentiate us from this artificial content. It is human-generated content, and perhaps it's also the opportunity to come back more to this very old traditional journalism where people are going out and talking to people and not just analyzing what's happening on social media. So I think it's actually new generative AI and new technologies are a very good opportunity to come back to our real values.
Any other pressing, yeah, I see somewhere back there, yeah.
Yeah, I have a quite practical question. I work for the Dike side. I work for the Czech government, and I would like to ask you how we can support you during the fact-checking process, because I do believe this is not our role as a government people to do fact-checking, for example, on vaccines or whatever, but we definitely need your support, but we have the information I would love to share with you. What we can do?
Is that addressed at anybody in particular?
No, just in general.
So anybody who feels...
I think education. I think we need to go into the schools, we need to teach the teachers, we need to get the kids when they're young. When they're teenagers, they're pretty savvy already and all that, but I think we need to go into schools at an early age, and I think governments need to provide more money for that also. I mean, at AFP, we're working with lie detectors on another hub, which is the hub in Luxembourg and Belgium. And we have reporters from AFP going into schools to talk with the students at a very young age. And I really believe that education is key in all this. To just get them to develop critical thinking, to think before they hit that button and share, to just develop critical thinking, and I think we don't have enough of that. And I think we need to hold politicians accountable for what they're doing too, because some of them are the main purveyors of disinformation, and I'm not sure that we're holding them accountable. I think the platforms need to be held more accountable. I think it's great that many of them are pouring money into this, but I think they could do more.
Alexandra, you want to, and Katia as well?
If I was about to answer this question to the person from the Polish government, I would say three things. First one would be seconding Joyce, so education and building space for introducing critical thinking to schools. Second thing would be securing funding for fact-checking activities, but also education in the field. And third, I would say following transparent communication from the political elites, so the fact-checkers have less work when verifying politicians' statements.
And Kati, you wanted to add that?
And perhaps just the last thing, it's also governments can help to centralize and optimize the different actions already ongoing. And because we really need to be able to scale. It's good to go to schools, but we could never go to all the schools, so we also need to put in place new formats and new actions at scale for everyone.
It should be part of the curriculum.
Yes, yes.
And this is something Yeah, just one moment. Just allow me one question, then I note you down, you're next. But this is something I would also like to keep for a moment, because the title of our session is Media Literacy and Fact-Checking. And over lunch, I had a conversation with Paolo, who is the executive director of EDMO, who just left, Paolo Cesarini. And he said what he would like to see is fact-checking and media literacy initiatives coming closer together, because sometimes they're sort of acting a bit in isolation. I would also like to hear the panel's views on that, what maybe you are doing already, or how you see that. Should media literacy and fact-checking, should that somehow get closer together, or are they really two rather separate domains? And I don't know who would like to start. Not everybody has to, but Alexandra, do you want to, or also David and Kati?
I believe that absolutely it should go together. No matter what way, the education is the key to embrace the resilience among the society. In our case, in Demagog, we just try to implement our first-hand experiences from the fact-checking to various contexts, depending. And I can give you one example of how even the OSINT can be implemented to some of the trainings for the general public. We had one of the requests for the trainings asking for some of the OSINT tools. So there is some kind of awareness. I think like knowing what the audience needs is just the key. And we should invest in education, definitely.
And that was a little bit what I mentioned when I presented our 360-degree approach. For me, fact-checking without media literacy is not very helpful, because you can pretend I fact-checked something, but then if you are not transparent about how you did it and what it is worth to have something fact-checked, it's of no use. For me, what is really important, I think, is the fact that in this new ecosystem today, I think media literacy is the same thing as important as literacy in the last century. We should all really have this element integrated everywhere in schools. Yes.
David?
It's hard to count on media literacy when the government supports, approves, or legitimates disinformation media. So citizens are kind of lost in media literacy, what is and what is not.
Okay, very important, very powerful. Okay, well, no? Then I would like to ask the gentleman here in the third row.
Thank you for the floor. My name is Ivo Kaplan. I am from Institute of European Democrats. And I would like to ask you, what do you think, why there is that obstacle of private financing of this fact-checking and everything? Because what I have seen, heard, and what is also my experience, because we are also organizing some conferences on disinformations, that all the time you as fact-checkers and the others try to get money from government or from EU funds or something like that. But I think it's really very generosic, very essential problem for the normal business. Practically these fake news, which are coming popular from the first campaign of Donald Trump. Before that, we don't even have this fake news. We had some, but that was not named as fake news. So these Trumps and these others, they are using it. In our countries, 90% of political spectrum who are using this information. In Hungary, the same. In all these Visegrad countries, maybe in Poland not now. But that I think that from private companies, there is essential interest to cancel it, and to because for the business. The essential thing is that you can have the provision of governments. And if people inside of the governments are lying, and they are lying not because of they are uneducated or they don't know what they are talking about. They know very well what they are talking about, and that's why they are talking. And this is this Trump's idea, yeah, that everything.
But what is the question now?
No, the question is why there is no discussions about private financing, about financing from financial institutions for making the project, which is not funded by EU or by national governments, but by the real business, because practically the society, which is not more democratic, then it will be headed by 3, 4, 5, 6 oligarchs, and maybe in the world, because there is the biggest problem of the societies today, and EU itself, because EU want to be.
But this is
fair.
a statement again. Sorry, we have to come to the question.
Is the question? No. The question is how we can do to attract the private financing, to get money from private companies, from this big money which is everywhere. There are so many money. There is not only investing this money. Part of this money could be invested to make the society back to be fair, to be responsible, to be accountable to the citizens.
I have to interrupt here. We have to come to the question because you're...
No, this is the question. This is all the time the question. I think that you understand.
I think there is already private financing. That's...
No, and how much?
Towards
not so
much. Battling disinformation.
If you are telling me, and I know that it is like this, that there is not so much money, then it's not enough. So how to attract much more? Because it's a new technology. This AI it's absolutely new technology. So why don't make a part of this these very huge investments to make this fair communication? That is my question.
Does anyone want to directly respond to that? Because I would add something. I mean, there is also fact-checking as a business.
Yeah, of course.
There is the likes of Facebook with the third-party fact-checking initiative, pouring a lot of money into that.
Google.
One could ask Google, thanks for the sponsoring, but yeah, Google is doing it. Why are they doing it? Sorry, but yes, why are they doing it? Have they got a vested interest?
Of course. Of course. Facebook is not doing it because, let's be honest. They need to give themselves a veneer of responsibility of whether it's Google, whether it's Facebook, but they are still some of the main purveyors of disinformation. So there's a flip side to all of this. Should we hold them more accountable? Yes, we should hold them more accountable. And I think it's coming slowly, maybe not quickly enough. There's so many players, key players in the disinformation landscape. You've got governments, you've got the head of X, Twitter, who is one of the main purveyors of disinformation. So you've got so many fronts that you have to fight on. And I think media organizations are trying to do the best they can. Should we do better? Probably. But let me tell you, fact-checking takes a lot of money. It's not something, if you want to do it properly, it's not something you do in a half hour. Some of the fact-checks, if you want to dig deep and make good fact-checks, can take a week, it can take longer. And the problem is, journalists before used to go out and do their story. You came back and you knew that you were a trusted source. Today, when somebody goes to do a story, let's say I'm giving on Busha, for example, the massacre in Busha, it was not enough for our journalists to go and say hundreds of bodies were laying on the ground. We told him to take pictures of every body. We told him it's like a forensic work that journalists have to do now, because you know that when you go back and you write that story, somebody's going to challenge it and say it's not true. So you've got to have the... So it's becoming harder and harder to work as a journalist in today's toxic environment.
Let me add something to this, because we have, of course, we are in a bit special position at Bellingcat, but we have double, triple check for every story we do, on an editorial level and on the researcher level as well. And of course, then comes like a potential legal advice and so on. So that's why it takes like weeks, sometimes months, you know, to produce a story, because we need to be very aware of that, what we write down, what it's in that story or article is 100% true, and it costs a lot of money, really.
Yeah, so just briefly from my side, journalism is expensive, and so is fact-checking, and that is also something we have to address, because it is part of guarding democracies and plays such a vital role for society, and I think that is something that is also being undermined, and of course we could have a whole panel on that. But looking at the time, and I think because we are almost exhausted our 1 hour, I want to move to our final round, and the final round is going to be very, very quick. I will ask every one of you here, and as I often do in these kind of sessions around this, I play Father Christmas, or whatever you want to call him, that guy who brings a present. So we've been talking briefly to some extent, about challenges and what you're working on, what you're doing in the media literacy field, in the fact-checking field, in your professions. Now, if I were the one who brings the present and you had a wish, give you some time to prepare yourself, but just in one sentence, what would you want me to bring you as a present, which would make your life and your working life, not your private life, your working life better and easier, and something, in which your passion lies? So what would that be? I know, think about it for a moment. I don't know who wants to be the brave one to start, but what present would you want from me or anybody else who can deliver on that? Who wants to start? Joyce?
I should keep my mouth shut.
No.
Across the Atlantic, something very important is happening today, and that is my wish.
Which is what? But say it.
A decent president who, voila.
That's
my wish.
That's a very concrete wish. I think you're probably not alone. Who wants to be next? Where can I be? David.
Time machine. Because time machine, like going back to maybe 2023 or earlier, and to avoid some people who were playing with us others. They were posing as friends, but at the end they have become a very significant part of one of the biggest conspiracy against state employees ever in Slovakia.
Okay.
That's funny. Definitely, Eastern Europeans are very nostalgic, because me too. I wanted to say time travel.
Time traveler's way. How
a little
far
bit
back
further,
do you want to go?
Before social media and before alternative facts.
To the good old days. Who? Alexandra?
I think I wish for more transparency in communication from both politicians, but also from the business and both private media and public media, which means that I also wish for bigger openness from traditional media to work with fact-checkers, to learn from each other, and to do big, important things that improved the state of public debate in our country, but not only.
And Julia, you?
Famous last words, right?
Almost.
I would say, and I'm Hungarian, so it might add to this sentence, just leave us alone and let us do our work.
Great. That's all we have time for today, I'm afraid, so just standing up to see you better. So please give our panelists another round of applause, and I'd like to thank them very much, and this is all from us, but there's now the final wrap-up. We stick to our time slots, so thank you also from my side for being so precise. So thank you for that, and over to Nick. Nick has taken over, and this is it for us. Thank you.